Ora tina koe, and welcome to That's Just Criminal with me, Annabel Creswell, and my co-host,
Sumudu Thode.
Today in the studio, who do we have, Sumudu?
We've got our friend, Edward Gay, who is a
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I figured we should start nice before we go, we hate the media. So I'm just lulling him into this false sense of security that we're going to be on his side. So Eddie's been a journalist for about 20 years. He's worked for the Herald, Radio New Zealand. He's covered a lot of high-profile cases, the Kahui twins case, David Bain, Jesse Kempson, and also Philip Polkinghorne.
And that's what we're here today, is to talk about name suppression. Now, lots of our many, over 5 fans have asked us to talk about name suppression.
I think Eddie was one of them, so 4 fans plus Eddie.
People seem really intrigued to talk about it. I find it a painful topic. It's painful in the courts. It's painful to advise your client on. I hate it when it comes up. But people seem really to want it to know about it.
I agree. I think it's the secrecy around it. Everybody, every time there's somebody who gets name suppression, the first question is, who is this person? And what are they trying to keep hidden, or why are they famous?
As an aside, can I just say, I went back through my text messages to Eddie Gay before this podcast to see if there were any worth reading out. And one of the
off the record text messages, those ones.
Yeah, off the record. Yeah. But one of the very first messages I ever sent you just was the C word.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually remember that message.
One of the first times, I think we'd already got to know each other, but one of the first times I was up against him in court because I was trying to get name suppression for my client, who was one of the Dilworth guys, I think we can say. I think he lost name suppression in the end anyway, but I'm personally not going to say it. Eddie wanted to print his name. I was fighting it in court, saying, keep him quiet, even he's dying, leave him alone. And Eddie just wouldn't let it go. And then afterwards, I texted him that. So obviously felt
justified,
that I
think.
Just because he wouldn't let it go, because I think what I was trying to do, I think the Crown was saying, just let her have it because she's just going to appeal, because if you appeal name suppression immediately, that gives you 21 days to appeal it. And so the Crown knew we were going to do that. And Eddie's still in court going, no, print it. I want to print this dying man's name.
I think your text message was your strongest submission, Annabelle.
You must sometimes, though, go, oh, they've got some good grounds. Or, come on, shut the Annabelle /Sumudu.
I mean, I would never say that.
You think it. You just think it, though.
And
Never.
probably text it too.
No, that text all went one way, Sumudu.
Yeah. It is much more refined and gentlemanly than I am. So that's how our beautiful friendship started. Eddie is obviously, normally you're on the side of trying to publish stuff, right?
I mean, always. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because of the public interest in open reporting, right?
Because we're meant to have a transparent and open justice system, and that can't happen when name suppression is granted.
So when then do you think it should be granted, Eddie?
I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. I can only think of a small handful of cases where I think it has been justified in being granted.
Okay, so what's the last case you can think of where you think name suppression was justified?
In this case, the case I'm thinking of, it involved a young man who was charged with the murder of his father, who was a gang member. He was given name suppression. I think quite rightly so, given the violence not only in the past of the deceased, but also on that night, and the wider family was also being threatened. And it was a self-defense case, and he was acquitted and kept name suppression. And that's why I'm trying to be very careful in my description of it.
Generally speaking, a court can make an order forbidding publication of name, address, or occupation of a person charged with or convicted or acquitted of an offence. Secondly, the court may make an order only if the court is satisfied that publication would be likely to cause extreme hardship to the person charged or convicted of, or any person connected with that person. And it's the extreme hardship test that we struggle with as lawyers, because you really have to satisfy. It's not just it's going to be hard for them. It has to be extreme. And then the other ones are casting suspicion on another person, causing undue hardship to any victim, creating a real risk of prejudice to a fair trial, endangering the safety of any person, and prejudice to the maintenance of the law or security of defence in New Zealand. So the court has to be satisfied that publication of name would lead to one of those things, and it is not easy.
The main one we deal with is the extreme hardship as opposed to the others.
I've used quite a bit the endangering the safety, because nowadays when you have somebody being dragged through the media, now they get trolled, now they get threats, and so there's also, and I always throw in their safety is endangered if they're getting threats online, which many do.
Yeah, and then you can link that to family as well, and if there's young kids or, kids at school. But what I mean is, rather than the casting suspicion on others or prejudice to law or defence, etc., it's mostly the impact on the person appearing in court or their family.
So we're normally trundling up to court with a pile of papers going, we want extreme hardship, these are our grounds, we want name suppression. What's your approach when you see us coming, Eddie?
We get sent the court lists in the morning in the district court, and obviously the High Court ones online. And whenever the S word is printed on those lists, that's often a
we knew it.
great flag to turn
Yeah.
up. So we come to court with the sole purpose of publishing a story that is a reflection of the matter before the court.
Tell me, Sumudu, what you advise your clients, because when my clients say, I want name suppression, one of the first things I would say is asking for name suppression is going to get journalists' attention. So if this is something that's going to fly under the radar anyway, let's not draw attention to it unless you have really great grounds, because it's very hard to reach that threshold. And to get extreme hardship, the courts want evidence. So you might be saying, my client is a famous athlete. If his name gets out, then he's going to have this extreme hardship. He's going to lose his job. His family's going to starve. He's going to be beaten to death by trolls. But you have to provide evidence of that. So you need to provide affidavits, and he might have some mental health difficulties. You have to provide that to the court. And then if you don't get it,
Or not for long anyway.
yeah, and now the journalists got access to all that now. They've sat there hearing you spill your guts, or your client's guts, and now they run away and print it all, write it all up and print it all. So it's like, we don't want to go to court and give them all this information unless we are really sure that you want to roll this dice.
Yeah, I normally say, hey, look, just asking for it, you're attracting attention just by doing that. So sometimes it's better not to. But see, this backfired on me really badly. So I'm a little bit nervous about it. This was about 2012. I was acting for somebody who was playing in the Warriors at the time and was quite sports famous. And he was only on a minor driving thing. So I was like, don't worry about it. Nobody comes to court looking for driving stuff. We'll just get you in and out. All good. No need for name suppression. So we turn up for sentencing. And who decided to get arrested that day but MrKim.com? So not only was it local media, but it was all international media. And every goddamn journalist I've ever seen in my life turns up at court. And he's there. He's got no name suppression. He's appearing in the same court. And it just kind of backfired. Whereas I was like, let's go under the radar. It's all good. And I was almost like, I pulled this off. Nobody knew anything but for the goddamn FBI.
Yeah, exactly. We should probably explain at this point. You can get interim name suppression just with an arguable case. So when you first come to court, we can normally get an interim name suppression up until the law says up until the next hearing.
And that's when you have to provide all the affidavits that we've talked about and actually have to make a case. And it gets harder at that point.
At the next hearing. But on the first hearing, you can get interim easily. And I think that might be what the public think. You've got name suppression. How did you get this? You can get it easily at the start. And that just really only gives your client a bit of time usually to go tell his family and
Tell their boss or whatever it is that they've got to
resign.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's only normally for about a week or two, so it's not for long.
And that time, Eddie, are you guys all just waiting, getting your story ready for that next court hearing so you can then print everything?
I mean, you're portraying us like a group of vampires.
Hey, if the shoe fits,
Sitting
if the
around
cake
sort of
fits.
hungry.
I want to say Eddie and his colleagues are extremely principled journalists who we actually trust. So even though sometimes people say don't trust any media, I think it's important that we say that. And I know that you're not out there
I mean, that'll get
bloodthirsty.
edited out. Yeah.
Because I have seen you and your colleagues get up and say, we don't want to print that. That's not what we're after, when it's something that's horrific. Or I know you care about victims of crime and things like that.
I think for me, where the issue is, like I get it if it's somebody Z class famous in New Zealand, but it's the people that, you're just like, this is a nobody. And name suppression is sought because of mental health grounds or because of their family, their kids. So they're no different to any other person. And the media want to print. And I'm like, there's actually no real public interest in this. This is just gossip. And that's when I get a little bit, grumpy.
I mean, I guess how I'd respond to that, Sumudu, is if they're no different to anyone else, then why should they have name suppression?
But what's the public interest in printing the fact that this person was involved in a fight or whatever it is, insert name of crime here? I get the public interest / gossip factor if it's somebody well known, but if it's just a nobody, like what's the point? Because you publish it on the front page of the Herald or stuff or whatever it is, it's there forever, and like the damage is already done.
I guess if that's how you think it should be, then we give away open and transparent justice and people aren't named. And personally, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. I mean, it's all a balancing exercise, right? We need to have open reporting, and we really want, if it's not our client, we want to know what's going on in New Zealand, right? I mean, I'm not that interested in a pub fight, but it's obviously there's some reason why they're publishing that, and it might be rising levels of violence or something like that. But it's balancing that against our individual cases, right? Where this person is going to suffer because their name is out there. I think that's what that is about. But Sumudu, do you actually believe that the media should not print as much as they do? Or not?
Oh, no, not that they shouldn't. It's like you say, we're all curious about what's going on. But now their name's on Google for everybody to see for the rest of their life. I get open justice, but it's just sometimes I'm like, other than just pure gossip factor, is there any newsworthiness in these articles?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to defend that decision, Sumudu, because I don't know what the case is, and it's not my call. I mean, you're right. It often comes down to a journalist's call or an editor's call. But a wee while back, I actually dug into the history of name suppression and where it comes from. And unlike most of our laws that obviously come from the UK, we actually made this one up in New Zealand. In about 1920, there was a change in law around probation for younger offenders. And a group of probation officers actually approached Parliament and said, it'd be great if, these young offenders, essentially our equivalent of the youth court now, right? Where it's automatic name suppression for young people. This group of probation officers approached Parliament and said, it's a real hindrance for these young people to be rehabilitated when their name is published in the newspaper for any offence. And, back in those days, I just grabbed at an example of stealing a hat. And actually, I think I'm going from my memory here, but I think that was actually the first case of where name suppression was asked for. But it did involve, from memory, a woman and her daughter who were caught stealing a hat in Christchurch.
But don't you think it's just so much worse now with Like that, those days, yeah, it goes on the paper, tomorrow's fish and chips. Now it's just there forever. And that's part of the difficulty I have is, like judges will go, oh, nobody cares about it tomorrow. I'm like, well, actually, in 5 years' time, when this guy wants to apply for a job and they Google him, it is there forever.
Well, it already was there forever in the archives anyway.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, what are the chances somebody's going to go look at the archives of a paper and go, what did this guy do in 1985?
But isn't the other side of that the news is so fast moving now with social media and stuff, no one can remember. There's so much more volume now, no one can remember what happened 24 hours ago.
Yeah, but you can Google it and you can find it. The archives or whatever, the search functions are just so much more accessible now. It's not, you just forget about it.
Part of the counter to that, Sumudu, is sadly there's a lot less courts in our country actually being covered by journalists.
But I think in smaller towns, especially where there's open justice, which is run by the Herald, they just kind of sit in court and go, oh, does judge say something that it's a good clickbait headline? Or, is there a story that is, like I say, newsworthy ? Gossip factor ?
Something is always going to be interesting to someone, isn't it?
It depends on your spin.
Sure, but I'd be in court thinking, why are the media here reporting on this guy stealing 18 packets of cigarettes from the dairy? And then my mum will go, did you see that someone stole 18 packets of cigarettes from the dairy? It's also interesting that you brought up the history, Eddie, because obviously the history stemmed from historically people were brought into the market square and put in the stocks, right? Everybody knew courts were open. It was like, let's show everybody what happens if you're naughty and you steal pumpkins from the marketplace. And that principle has carried on through, right? We want to know what's happening. We want people doing bad stuff to have some level of public deterrence.
I don't think being identified is part of the punishment.
But you must accept that shame comes with that. And in some families and in some cultures, there's more shame than in others. So you must accept that shame is part of something that it feels punitive.
Yeah, it feels punitive. That's a natural consequence of being charged.
Now it sounds like reading a judgment that you don't agree with.
That you don't agree with. But that is a natural consequence of appearing in court.
Yeah. So you're saying you're not sitting there going, I'm going to name and shame this person. I'm going to make them feel terrible. You're just going, well, this is just part of the process.
That's not our role. Yeah, thank you, Annabelle. Yeah. Thanks, Chrissy. That's what I was trying to say. That's not our role. Our role is not to punish someone for being in court.
Do you accept, though, that nowadays with social media and trolling being what it is and death threats being what it is, that sometimes publishing people's names can actually endanger them and make things so much worse, perhaps worse than the crime that they've committed?
I'm aware that people are frequently abused online, and obviously I don't support that in any way. But I think when someone is threatened online, I think the answer to that is to investigate the threat, not shut down open and transparent reporting.
Even as lawyers, like we have something that's by New Zealand standards high profile and we get abuse about it. So it's not just the client.
So do we as journalists.
Nobody should be threatened to be raped and killed and all of that. Yeah. But Annabelle, I'm sure you've had this where you've had something that's got media attention and then the threats have turned towards you as a lawyer as opposed to even your client.
It does, and I'm sure it does it more so for female counsel. But what I want to understand is, does it change your view at all, Eddie, when you realise that, and you must be aware that now publishing someone's name does actually mean that they could have death threats, sometimes credible death threats. Does it change your view that everything should be openly reported? Or do you sometimes think when someone's going to be more susceptible to getting those kind of really dangerous threats, maybe sometimes we keep their name quiet?
It's a real hard one, Chrissy. No one should receive threats. I think the answer lies somewhere closer to preventing the threats being made than shutting down open and transparent reporting. Because, I mean, where does that then end? I mean, if that same person who is charged could receive threats from being charged,
Yeah.
and then
And then
they're found guilty, they go to trial and they're found guilty, and then is there a similar argument
did
made
they
that
get
they could be
threats, and then
threatened?
those dudes get, and it's like this Russian doll situation that
Well-
goes on forever.
I'm less concerned about people getting name suppression post a guilty plea or verdict. You know, I think my concern is more before that, when there's a not guilty plea. And I think that those are two different things.
You're more focused on fair trial rights, Sumudu, which is in one of the other grounds. We've really been looking at safety and extreme hardship, but
Well, I mean, Kempson's probably a great example of fair trial rights and why name suppression was granted, because he had name suppression right throughout Grace Millane trial, but only because he had two other trials, I think, at the time that were going to happen in the future. But the reality is, we know that if his name was published pre or during the Grace Millane thing, and then he had two more trials for attacking two other women, there is no chance, whether or not he was convicted of the Grace Millane murder, there was no chance that any jury would have found him not guilty. In a situation like that.
But you're right,
Like, because
Well, Sumudu's great point has now actually been enshrined in law, and I'm going off the top of my head here again, but I think it's 199A of the Criminal Procedure Act, where the media essentially can't report previous convictions.
Yeah.
Or it gets very complicated with which sets of charges have been laid first.
Yeah, I actually looked at that quite recently in terms of a takedown order. So before trial, having to bring an order for the media to take down any reports of previous convictions, because it would be a breach of that section.
you're right. It's 199A is automatic suppression of details of previous convictions. So that's the law now. And it's worth mentioning as well, there are other automatic suppressions. So youth, for example, probably stemming from when the lady stole the hat. Youths,
When the probation officers went to Parliament.
youths in the youth court get automatic suppression. It would be something helpful when you've got a youth, because obviously the principle is you're going to ruin a young person's life and taint them forever. The other ones that get automatic suppression are victims of sexual violence. And then there's been a recent law change about suppression of defendants in sexual violence cases. Hasn't there, Eddie? Is that something that you are happy about?
The victims getting say on name suppression.
So the victims already did have some say. And
Their views had to be taken
Their
into
views were
account.
taken into account, yeah.
So what they've changed it to is they've changed the wording of the purpose of the section is to protect the complainant's privacy and support the complainant's autonomy in connection with the publication of details of a person accused. It used to say the purpose of the section is to protect the complainant. So basically women were victims of serious sexual crime were coming forward and saying, I want his name published. Previously, if there was any chance that he would be identified based on her having automatic suppression, then he would get name suppression. And victims were saying, I don't want that. So this legislation is to allow victims to have a say about whether defendants now get name suppression ongoing.
This came pretty soon after the Fairgrave case, which has finally gone right through the courts. But, you know, that case involved a young man who had sexually offended against a group of young women, mostly who he had met through school, and that some of those young women had had their own automatic name suppression as survivors of sexual assault lifted. And he continuously appealed his name suppression all the way to the Supreme Court. And before the Supreme Court could issue its finding declining his name suppression, he had actually reoffended by having a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old. And I think that case did show just how important it is to name especially convicted sex offenders. I'm not sure that that's why the law change happened, but I think it is important to give survivors the chance to be heard on name suppression.
Well, they are and were heard, though. So it's not about them not being heard, but it's just about who gets the final decision.
Yeah, it was a factor.
Yeah.
Now they have a lot more power. Their say carries a lot more weight.
I think the difficulty, and I mean, both Annabelle and I have spoken out against this, the victims or complainants always had a say. So they could say, look, I want this person to be named. I'm not going to seek name suppression and go through that process so they can be named. There was always that option. But you know that in name suppression arguments, there's so much more information that a judge will get that the victims or complainants just don't have in terms of making that decision. So it could be psych reports, it could be affidavits, it could be, letters from work, whereas the victims or complainants will not have that information before they go, this person should have name suppression or they shouldn't. So the law hasn't changed in terms of saying, the threshold is still extreme hardship, but they just don't have that information. So I have real problems with them making the final decision based on a gut feeling and reaction.
There are issues with it, and especially in like what happens when there are multiple complainants and some complainants say yes and some complainants say no. But at the same time, how many cases have we had where a defendant is granted name suppression and that name suppression continues, and then when it finally lapses, more complainants come forward?
This is not an argument favoured by defence counsel. More shit's going to come up for your client. But yes, I suppose from every other perspective, that's a reasonably positive thing. Take the example of the parish priest, where they might have been offending, and then what the Catholics would do is just move them to a different parish, and that could go on for 50 years. So it's once those people are in the paper, then they go, oh, that was my priest. He used to
And he touched me.
He used to invite me into the vestibule with regularity.
And I think that happened, was it Parker, who was the up north teacher? His name got published, and it's like all the different schools that he was at, and all these people kind of came and reported after that.
Dilworth is a good example, isn't it? I mean, they just, after you openly reported everything, Eddie, like a dog with a bone, they kept coming and coming, didn't they? And if most of the Dilworth guys hadn't died, there'd probably still be people coming. There'd probably still be cases before the court.
Dilworth, we've had waves of complainants come. And again, there have been cases where a Dilworth accused initially was given name suppression, and then once they've been named, many more charges have been laid because more complainants came forward.
I can't imagine how many times people actually went and made complaints about Dilworth before police did something. I mean, because it's quite notorious that police in the 80s and even 90s would be slow in coming forward with sexual abuse, and I think sexual abuse against males in particular.
Yeah, I mean, we know Wilson, for example, Ian Robert Wilson, who's one of the worst offenders at that school. He was charged and convicted in the 90s of one offence against one boy. And you would have to ask what kind of investigation happened in the 90s. But I mean, it shows what great police work was done later.
It's
Did
kind
they
of
have
funny.
name suppression back then?
Wilson had name suppression, ironically.
This is a very good argument for you then, isn't it?
Another one, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's actually, I mean, putting aside the lawyer hat, what's really disappointing is I feel like a lot of these people that do have name suppression, like the media build it up and you're like, who is this? Who is this? Like, it's this famous entertainer, this famous sports person. And then you read it and you're like, who the hell is that?
Yeah. Especially TikTokers and people, and it'll be like, this person has 70,000 followers. I can guarantee that I do not know one single one of those 70,000 followers. on TikTok,
Yeah.
nor do I care what said TikToker is up to in their spare time.
And it's just really disappointing because I feel like you sort of build this up, like there's some newsworthiness in this. And and I guess that's what it is, right? Like that's what you guys are trying to do as journalists. You're trying to create a buzz. But then it's like there's this letdown. You're like, I don't know who that is and I don't care.
He doesn't work for Heat magazine. Like he's not he's not trying to create a buzz. The purpose really of the podcast was because members of the public feel like the question is who gets it and who doesn't, because it seems random. It does seem people like that ACT Party guy get to keep name suppression for a really long time. Some people get their names leaked straight away. We've explained a little bit about the test now of extreme hardship and fair trials, but Eddie, if someone asked you, a random member of the public said, who gets it and who doesn't, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really tough question to answer, and it should be on the merits of the case.
But I mean, I think the important thing that listeners might not know is just being famous is not enough to get name suppression, because that seems to be this commonly held belief that people get name suppression just because they're famous.
Yeah, that's actually in the statute, but then a lot of defense lawyers will then lean hard on, well, but my client's a well-known financier and he's going to lose his job and there's the extreme hardship.
I mean, it's very hard to find sympathy for financiers, anybody that knows himself.
I apologise to the financier community. I just pulled that as an example.
I think that's an important thing for listeners, you're right, Sumudu, to know. And the other thing is that
How would you answer that? Why do
exactly
you think some people get it and some people don't?
Exactly the same. What one judge thinks is extreme hardship may differ from judge to judge, and it is random. I tried to have a look at some cases to look at what largely amounts in our courts to extreme hardship in recent times, and it can be loss of job and income. It can be children are likely to be identified at school, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes loss of income is considered to be a natural consequence. It's in the Act that it's just because you're well known and famous does not mean you get it. So it isn't about that. But of course, if you're famous, there's going to be more media interest, and then the consequences of your name being public might involve losing your job, losing your reputation, and then depression, mental health issues, and possible suicidal ideation and things like that. That does seem to be something that the courts will take seriously. PTSD seem to take seriously, but in some cases they don't. Some cases they say, well, that's just that's just what happens when you...
Yeah, you've already suffered those consequences. It's not as a result of publication. One reason why you might not get name suppression, because, for example, say it's like a police officer or it's a lawyer. I remember years back, when it was a young female lawyer who took contraband to her boyfriend at the prison. And then, all of us young female lawyers, people were like, well, was it, who was it? Was it you? Was it you? So then it was like,
so we're all like,
name
just name her.
Just name her, God damn it, because it's not me.
Yeah.
So that I think sometimes works the other way. So if it's like a, high up police officer or something, and then all high up police officers who would be a handful that fit into that category, everyone's like, is it them? Is it them? Is it that person? So you want them named so that other people don't get asked all those questions?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the exact. It says, court may make an order if publication would be likely to lead to the identification of another person whose name is suppressed by order or by law.
So say if the complainant in a sexual violence case has got automatic name suppression, there's more likelihood that their husband who's got the same name is going to have their name suppressed, for example.
Yeah.
Let's say if they go and publish, Sumudu Thode beat up her podcast wife. It's like, who the hell she beat up. You don't need to name who it
I know.
is.
We don't have the same surname. I kept comparing us to those podcast sisters on that. What's the Netflix? Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a season 2 coming out.
I know, and I'm like, it's us, Sumudu, we're sisters. But just sisters from another misters.
Yeah, another misters.
Eddie, would you like the chance to summarise what what your view is on name suppression laws in New Zealand?
This isn't a summation, but I do often wonder how much court time is taken up with name suppression, especially in the appellate courts. And given the wait times we currently experience, how much time would be saved if there was no name suppression?
Like no one even had a chance to get it.
Or like everybody just gets it automatically.
In your ideal world, AED.
What do you think that the name suppression laws at the moment, like, do you think they're fit for purpose?
Oh, he loves them. He loves them, and they're getting tighter.
Well, it's making our jobs harder.
I still think name suppression is still too easy to get.
Do you? Jesus Christ.
Do you? Oh, can you come do our job for a week and see how hard it actually is on this side?
Well, I start by going, oh, you're not going to get it, so let's not. And that my spiel that I said earlier. And then something will happen. Like, then they'll say, but something. And you'll be like, oh,
fine.
We're going to have to try. And then it's like, I hate the battle. I hate the trying to get it. And then even if you do get it, that's only until then it's revisited. So it would be nice if it was not a thing. But then there are definitely cases, Sumudu, and I would agree, not you, Eddie, but where you feel like this person's name can't be public. This is just so awful. And they're going to die, or their life's going to be irreparably damaged. And you feel like, yes, they're going to be punished in law, but they don't need to be shamed as well.
I'm strong in terms of name suppression pre a guilty verdict or convictions being entered. After they've convicted, I'm Camp Eddie. I think, open justice, all of that. But I think pre-conviction and the way that evidence comes out as the case goes, or what comes out in trial, is just so different to what we know at the beginning of a case when we're running these arguments. And then the damage has been done already, like it's too late, and you can't repair it. You can't repair having your, face on the front page of Stuff or Herald.
Yeah.
What's been the worst you talked about those really negative outcomes for clients who have been named despite an application for name suppression.
Do you think this is your podcast now?
Yeah. Who do you think you are to ask us questions?
I have had one, and it wasn't your fault, Eddie, but a couple who were charged with having indecent materials. And what's the word for that charge?
Objectionable material.
Objectionable materials, thank you. And the Herald published their address and their name. Ooh. And they lived in a really small rural community. And so local people just went round there and beat them up. Yeah. So that was terrible. But it was the address that shouldn't have been published, really, because they didn't really have grounds for name suppression. So that's the best, one of the good arguments we've got for keeping name suppression and not abolishing it as a concept that, like Eddie would like us to do. Thank you very much, Eddie. It's lovely to see you on the podcast. It's lovely to see you in court, even though we fundamentally disagree whether name suppression should exist or not. Your opinions are valid, and this is a safe space.
Sorry, I didn't say just bin name suppression because I have seen.
I know.
I have seen cases where name suppression has been valid.
No, I know, and you did say that early on. I just put those words in your mouth for the comedy.
We're not going to let the truth get in the way of a good ending to our podcast.
Really bad journalism, guys. Really bad journalism.
Well, lucky we're not journalists.
Yep, couldn't get into that course.
Thanks for coming and hanging with us, Eddie.
I mean this. I've listened to every episode, and I'm a big fan. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Eddie. So that was good to talk to Eddie. We obviously see him every day. Oh, not every day, but we obviously see him regularly and know his take on a few things. But I haven't sat down and really understood his firm beliefs in name suppression before.
I think it was just interesting to hear it from all angles. And Eddie was our first fan on the podcast, which was nice too.
Very nice of him to come on the show.
I'm surprised he agreed. Thank you to LexisNexis, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mate, please, a court. Is that all you've got?
Yeah,
I think that'll
tired.
do.
It's I'm
same,
exhausted. I'm like, I can't word anymore. It's 9 o'clock.